Hello and welcome to Back to Basics. I'm Rico Burton and I serve as your host today. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to the more than 100 million Americans 50 plus and their families: health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. AARP also produces the nation's largest circulation publications, AARP the magazine and AARP Bulletin. In the month of October, AARP will help you navigate Social Security and Medicare decisions that focus on enhancing your financial health. AARP can help you with resources, expert content, and tools for consumers to manage your Medicare and Social Security decisions. We also have resources to help you plan for retirement and ideas to help increase your short and long term savings. Visit us at aarp.org/AZ for more information. And today we are with Coach SheriAnne, and she is going to give us some information about shopping on a budget. Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Good morning, Lady B. I'm doing great. How are you?
I won't complain. Thanks for asking.
I can sense fall around the corner here in Arizona, so for all of those of you that are tuning in from across the United States, please let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're experiencing fall colors, I'm a bit jealous, but I hope all is well. And yes, so today we are talking about grocery shopping on a budget. And a lot of that is it will resonate with everyone because I feel like everyone feels like inflation has just really impacted their lives in such a massive way. And so, yeah, so I have 12 tips to give today. And I also have a few tips on how to start budgeting because there's actually quite a few people I've realized that don't even really understand how to even begin budgeting. And it's a skill that's learned. You don't just come up with it, and so but there's a
Absolutely.
lot of parents that are not teaching their kids that. And so it's important to learn how to budget, like how to even start
Well,
budgeting. So
I think they're not teaching them because they don't know. And so this is a wonderful opportunity that you're sharing with us today to help us. So for those of you watching, make sure that if you have any questions at all, please put them in the chat and Coach will get to those. And if she's not able to get to them today, she will circle back and get back to you. Thanks. All right,
yeah.
Coach.
Well, and another question I receive quite frequently is what is a reasonable budget? And it's a fascinating question. So I went digging a little bit, and the average 20 to 50-year-old, which I know is a wide range in an age, but we're talking about an adult woman, is expected to spend about $250 a month on groceries. And I candidly felt like that, and that's on average. I felt like that was low. Because that doesn't take into account your coffee stops or little miscellaneous things here and there or going out. That's just strictly your grocery budget. Um, and it's interesting because I felt like 250 was low, but that's the average, And so then someone asked me, could I survive on $25 a week, on groceries? And I was thinking, yeah, you can, but who knows what you're going to be eating, and it's going to be rather scarce. But a reasonable budget, usually per person, is I say you should consider 250 to $350 per month per person. And that's an adult. Children, of course, are a different ball of wax. And especially if you have growing teenagers. Like I have two growing teenage boys in my house that eat, I feel like, for three people, four actually, two each probably. But so it's just all, there's so many different variables. And so before we even jump into the tips on how to grocery shop on a budget, let's let's visit how to start budgeting for those of you that do struggle with, like, where do I even start? So the best thing to do is to review the last 2 to 3 months, and I like to say three because there's just different variables that can come into play. But review your last 3 months of spending on food, and you have to take into consideration all of the places you go. Like if you go to little boutiques, like places like a Trader Joe's, your grocery store, if you go to a Costco or a Sam's, any place like that where you're buying consumable items, go back into your your bank account. Yeah, because that's usually if you're paying cash, then make sure you're saving your receipts so that you can monitor this. But go back for like the 3 months of spending and write it all down. And so that you have, and you can figure out an average of what you're spending over the last 3 months.
Does that
And then
include
if you really
restaurants and
want to,
things we've been to?
um, go
Does
ahead.
that
What's that?
you said consumable, so does that mean if I go to a restaurant and eat, that should be included in this particular thing?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And the easiest way to go about it is to make columns of, if it's eating out, if it's just grabbing a coffee out, you're eating out food versus, what you're buying at the store. Because then the next step is to evaluate, determine where you can make cuts. If you're looking at trying to make your budget less, so it's best to create columns to where, so what you can eliminate, the extras, because it's amazing how much a coffee drink is at a coffee shop. It's it's 5 plus, unless you're just getting a drip coffee and it's, you're buying it from Dunkin' Donuts, then it's like probably $1 to $2. But for the most part, even coffee drinks are very, very expensive. I treat those as a treat. Like if I'm going to get coffee with a friend, that's a treat. Um, and so then the third step in creating a budget is create structure. Figure out when you want to go to the store, whether it's going to be 1 or 2 times a week, and put a spending cap on it. So that's the best way to work within a budget is go back 3 months and figure out what your average spending is. Number two is to determine where you can make budget cuts. And then the third is to stick to a structured schedule. So for my house, we go shopping on Sunday because interestingly enough, my youngest child, my boy, he's 16, he likes to go to the store with me. So it's something that we do together. So Sundays are our days to shop, and every once in a blue moon, we have to do something midweek to grab something. Um, but if you're somebody that wants fresh produce on a relatively consistent basis, then you're probably going to the store maybe twice a week, once at the beginning of the week and once midweek. But create a structure, whatever works for your schedule. Okay, so now to jump into how to shop on a budget. So after you've created your budget. So the best thing, tip number one is to plan your meals. And I like to try to plan around sales, so because we get a lot of junk mail in the mail, but you get the grocery ads. I'll take a look at those and see what cuts of meat are going to be on sale, or if there's just certain staple items that I know are going to be on sale. So I try to plan around the sales that are happening, and it's easy for me to do that because I'm going on a Sunday. I'm not going after work, after I worked all day during a work day. And that's the reason why I do that. And so plan your meals, and I will encourage you to try to plan them around sales. And if you have a smartphone, which most of us do these days, every store has an app. Every store has an app. And so you can also download that store's app and follow their sales on the app. You don't have to weed through your junk mail if you don't want to. And so it's on the app as well. And another benefit to having the app is sometimes, like, I'm a Fry's shopper, so we shop at Fry's. Every once in a while when I get there, there'll be like a little QR code that I can scan and get extra money off of an item that I'm purchasing. So just being aware of what stores have available to you is really key. And planning your meals around what's on sale is helpful. So tip number
Christine,
two is,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
Christine Gordon's saying that using the apps is a little challenging, I guess, for her. She said they're hard to, kind of navigate. And she said the coupons aren't as handy now. And the flyers, sometimes you don't get them in the mail. Hang in there, Christine. They're around there
yeah.
someplace. Pick them up sometimes as soon as you walk into the market. Sometimes they're right at the front. You may have to get them. You can sign up online and get them too. And you might just have to play at home with that ad a little bit before you get there so you don't get frustrated. I know that's happened to me numerous times too.
Oh,
Hang in there.
in the beginning, I was so frustrated trying to figure it out because it was challenging. So Christine, I'm right there with you. And my oldest brother is handicapped, and I take him grocery shopping. And he was wondering, like, how do you do that? And so instead of me fixing it for him, I help facilitate him going to the front of the store and asking the customer service at the store to walk him through how to use the app. And so you can go to the customer service at the store. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, and yes, it's not convenient, but once you have it down, it's really nice and it is very convenient. So if you're struggling with it, just go to the customer service at the store and they will be more than happy to help you, because they also know that if you're using their app, you're going to be in their store probably a little more frequently. So they're more than willing to help you out. But yeah, I fully understand being frustrated. Um, okay, so tip number 2 is to create a shopping list. Do not go to the store without a shopping list, because I know everyone listening to this has, and you end up with twice as many things in your cart than you originally went there for. It happens every time. Because if you have a list, you can stay focused and you're less distracted and you're less likely to have impulse buying. So use a shopping list. And we use the Microsoft to-do list because everyone in my household has a list and it all syncs to mine. So if my boys are like, hey, we're out of blah, blah, blah. In the old days, we used to write it on a note on the fridge, like a magnet note. I mean, that's how I grew up. It's like my mom would be like, put it on the list. Uh, but now we have these smartphones that have these, syncable apps. So we all have our own grocery list and it all syncs to mine. So use a grocery list. It helps tremendously. And when you're doing that, shop the perimeter of your store first. And this is an old adage because everything on the perimeter is like your baked goods, your meats, your produce, things that are fresher. Because then all the processed foods are more on the inside of the store and the frozen foods and things like that. So shop your perimeter first and really focus on nutrient dense veggies and fruits, dairy, protein, whole grains, all the things that you would find on the perimeter. Start there first.
Well, Francis is asking, does the grocery list include cleaning products and paper products or just food?
That's a great question because I did say earlier consumables, and cleaning products are considered consumables, not even though we're not consuming them, we are consuming them in our house. So yes, that is part of your grocery list or your cleaning items. Thankfully, we're not buying those as frequently as food though.
Thank you.
So tip number 3 is to shop produce that is in season and local. And the reason you do that is because it's actually cheaper. Because if you're buying produce that is being shipped in, it's typically a little bit costlier because they're having to pay to have it brought in. So if you can go find a farmer's market, it's really affordable, and shop what's in season, what's happening right now. Like apples are really popular right now because it's fall. Um, and frozen is a perfectly acceptable alternative. People always think frozen foods, frozen vegetables, and frozen fruits aren't as good, when in actuality, they're the most nutrient dense because they're frozen at their peak. And so it's frozen fruits. So I love berries. Berries tend to be very expensive. So I buy frozen berries. I mean, because it's just more cost effective for me. And to me, it doesn't matter if they're frozen or fresh because they still taste wonderful. But yeah, shop what's in season and don't be afraid to do frozen. It's perfectly acceptable. So number 4, meats tend to be probably one of the most expensive things on our grocery list. So I buy meat in bulk and then I separate it out and I freeze it at home. And so that just makes it a little more cost effective for me because when you buy in bulk, it is cheaper. So consider buying your meat in bulk and freezing it. And then, there are cheaper cuts. You can buy a whole chicken rather than chicken breast, tenders, wings, and learn how to cook a whole chicken. And ground meat is always, more cost effective than buying steaks. Yeah, it doesn't taste as great as a steak, but it's still meat, still, giving you your protein. But yeah, consider buying your meat in bulk and then freezing it. So tip number 5 is, and this has always been an adage in my house also, is to prepare larger quantities and have leftovers. Because not only does it save money for you, but it saves time. So if you're not a poo-poo of leftovers, because I know people are like, I can't do leftovers, just can't. Then I guess this tip isn't for you. But in my house, leftovers are key. And plus it's really easy to reheat and feed young people, teenage boys that are growing rapidly. But it does save you time and money. So consider preparing larger quantities of food because that will be helpful. So tip number 6 is don't be afraid of grains and dry goods, beans, lentils, rice, couscous, things like that, because they actually are less expensive and they're fiber rich. And if you have access to a store where you can buy them in bulk, they're even more affordable. So we have a Sprouts here, and I'll buy rice and beans and things like that, migraines in bulk at Sprouts because it's more cost effective because you're not paying for the packaging. So, but yeah, don't be afraid of dry goods. Dry goods and grains are really good for you because they're fiber rich. So be willing to try some new things if you haven't tried, a multitude of different kinds of grains. People tend to shy away from them. They just stick to like plain rice. And I'm like, no, 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 like do long grain rice. Try something different or couscous or falafel. Uh, do you like grains, Lady B?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
I
do.
do.
You know, and potatoes are a great source of starch and good carbohydrates. We prefer to do sweet potatoes at my house rather than or Yukon Golds if we're doing like a white potato. All right. So tip number 8 is to avoid highly processed foods because they tend to be more expensive, they're less nutrient dense, and you're better off spending your money on whole food. Yes, sometimes the processed foods can be cheaper, but my adage with this is you are going to pay for your health sooner or later. So you might as well pay for it with your groceries and just really be on a good budget and put good food in your body rather than buying highly processed foods. That's definitely an opinion of mine because some people will think, well, it's cheaper if I can get like a box of rice-a-roni for $1, and it's all there. And I'm just like, well, it's really highly processed. And so you're better off trying to figure out how you want to add your own seasoning to your own rice.
Okay.
And then, so now tip number 9, I think we're on. Did I skip
8.
one? Oh, I did skip one. So we're on, so 8. I thank you, Dawn. So 8 is try eating meatless meals once a week, once or even twice a week. And because meat is one of the most expensive items on our grocery list, I would encourage you to just consider doing a meatless meal. And it's totally acceptable to have eggs for dinner. Like we eat a lot of eggs in my house. Or doing mixing, a lentil and a rice, so doing beans and lentils and rice together. There's a lot of ideas out there. If you look back on our archive of back to basic shows, I've even done vegetarian meals. So you can take a look at that. You can go to YouTube, get some ideas for some meatless meals, and you just be willing to be creative and try something and move away from meat once to twice a week. That will help. And now tip number 9 is to shop generic versus name brand. Generic is very comparable to name brand. They've done a lot of research and a lot of studies, and the name brand products the generic products are just as good as the name brand products, and you're saving a lot of money. If you just stand at the store every now and again and look at a name brand product versus the generic like Kroger, because if you're a fry shopper, it's Kroger, um, you'll it's like if you look at the ingredients, it's the exact same. It's just you're paying for a name brand, you're paying for a name. So unless you're really devoted to that name and you've got some stock in it or something, there's nothing wrong in buying generic. And I strongly encourage you to evaluate why you're buying name brand versus generic because you're paying for it. So tip number 10 is don't shop when you're hungry. if you're stopping by the
Right.
store at the end of a long work day and you're hungry, you're bound to put stuff in your cart that you never intended to buy ever. So don't shop when you're hungry. It never bodes well. You shook your head on that, Lady B, as if you've experienced that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then you end up purchasing all kind of things. And we even see people in the store opening items and eating the potato chips or something, while they're still shopping, knowing they're going to pay for them, but they're just, like munching because they're hungry. It makes a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. So when you're planning your meals and planning your grocery list, take into consideration planning your timing of going to the store and making sure that you're not going when you're hungry. And along those lines, if you're shopping with young people, whether they're your grandkids or your kids, be prepared. They will ask for the sun and the moon and the stars. They will ask for everything. Young people are designed to ask and ask and ask. That's just how we're built. And so be prepared. And so a tip that I have for that is not part of my 12 tips of budget shopping, but I would always tell my kids, even my young adult children that come with me and want to throw stuff in the cart, I'm like, you get one thing this trip, this shop trip. You get one thing that you want to throw in there that's not on the list, and that's it. And otherwise, I remember when I would have so much stuff in the cart from them, and I'm like, this isn't even on my list. Like, it's the same as shopping when you're hungry. You're like, how'd this get in here?
Well, another thing, of course, you can do is tell them, sure, you can purchase it with your allowance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They'll put
Yeah,
it
that's
back then.
definitely a oh yeah, that's a staple in my house of saying in the sense of I'll take care of all of your needs. Your wants are on you. Your wants are on you. We can negotiate some of those wants, but I will take care of all your needs, but everything else,
Right.
we'll talk about. Okay, so number 10 is I'm sorry, number 11 is challenging here, but it's to grow your own produce. So it's challenging here due to just it being so blazing hot for so many months out of the year. There's only certain things you can grow in when it's that hot. But if you and there's community gardens that help support because I've tried gardens at my house and I struggle with it. But the community gardens, like there's one at Scottsdale Community College, and that's the closest one to me, that it's fully supported and you can grow your stuff there, but it's helpful because it's way more successful than doing it on your own if you don't have a green thumb. But growing your own produce is a great way to really save not only money, but to have more nutrient dense because fresh produce just tastes so much better. If you've ever grown your own tomatoes and tried those tomatoes versus the tomatoes that you get at the store, it's like night and day. And so it just tastes so much better when you grow it yourself. So if you have the capacity and the ability, because I know people are tuning in from all over the United States, I encourage you to have a garden. You'll love it. You'll love it. It'll be therapeutic as well as good for you nutritionally. I
Sounds
saw a
good.
comment about shopping with your spouse is just as bad. That made me chuckle. I'm not sure who said that, but that's very true and very funny. Uh, Francis, yes. So tip number 12 is and I've said this earlier, but it's get creative with meals. Don't be afraid to branch out and try new recipes and allow you looking at new recipes to help you also with your planning meals, because we also can get stuck in a rut and eating the same things all the time, which there's nothing wrong with that. But you getting creative does help you think outside the box and look at shopping a little differently. And so I know this was a lot of tips, and if you have any questions or any comments about them, please put them in the comments and I will circle back around and answer any questions. But I would say of them all, the biggest few that I stick to religiously is making sure I have a list because it helps me be successful at the store and not feel like I'm out of control. Having a list helps me really just stick with my budget. And definitely shopping the perimeter of the store and not getting lost inside the aisles. Because when you get lost inside the aisles, you have a tendency just to start putting stuff in your cart and getting way off budget. Um, but those two really help. tremendously.
We talked about shopping and buying a few larger quantities for several reasons. A couple things I'll say. One is if you have a friend, you might want to combine what you're doing and shop that way so that you get bulk prices and then you can split it up. I do that with a friend for our fresh fish that we get. We buy it in bulk and they send it and it's frozen and all the rest, but these huge boxes. And sometimes I don't want the whole thing. And so we'll just split it up. That's one thing. And another is when you're talking about making enough food for leftovers, Saturday is usually our leftover day. And it's like a smorgasbord. We pull out what we've had in the freezer or in the refrigerator, and it's a nice smorgasbord. So everybody gets hopefully something that they're going to like. The other thing that it does for you is it frees you up from having to cook every day or doing something in the kitchen, which can be a little frustrating. And this way you have a little more time to yourself.
No, I love that. And when you do your meal planning, you could, Saturday's just like Saturday's leftover day. Um, I love that. And one tip that's not in what I talked about, but and I I just thought of it and I know it's out there. It wasn't in my tips because it's not what I do, but I know it is useful for a lot of people, but that is shopping online. Like if you are very much, you're an impulse person and you know that if you go to the store and you're going to be impulse buying, shopping online might be great for you. You can just go on. And I know that every time you do it and you're a repeat, it remembers your order. So if you're buying staples, you can go in there and and check off what you've purchased before, and it makes it a whole lot easier.
Well, Kathleen is asking, is food for pets included in the budget? I hope not. My daughter has a Great Dane and that thing can eat. So I hope that it's not. What do you say, Coach?
I don't include that, and it's funny because my daughter has a dog that she buys expensive food for, and that's not in her grocery bill. That's her dog bill because there's also other things along with the of having a pet that you have pet expenses. So the pet food goes with pet expenses, and that's part of your overall budget, which is good to evaluate every now and again because we're just talking about your grocery budget right now, but then that grocery budget is part of everything else. You have utilities, you have a pet, you have, your rent or your mortgage, so there's a bigger budget. So yeah, I don't think pet food goes into our food budget.
That's good to know. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. But it is
Yeah,
certainly
she's
something
like,
to consider in terms of your all over budget, the pets and things that we have. That's something very, very much to consider. I have a question about online shopping or shopping and then you collect it when you get there. I just wonder if they're giving me the freshest of things. For instance, if I asked for a gallon of milk, are they giving me the one that expires sooner or the one that expires farther away? Do they take the time to do that? You know what I mean? Are they checking
oh
the
yeah,
bread for the little things on the bread to see which day it was actually brought in so I get bread that's going to
yeah.
last me the longest? What do you think?
That's why I don't do online shopping, and so I want to be able to pick my own produce. I want to inspect what I'm getting. And so yes, I'm a bit of a control freak. But from people that I know that do online shopping, they feel like they do get the freshest stuff. They feel like the person that's picking it does do a good job at picking the items out. So, um, but yeah, I just like making sure it's done.
That's nice to know. The other thing, of course, to do when you're shopping, and I think that you alluded to that in what you're talking about, is when you plan your meals, think about how one thing can become something else. So that maybe I'm making macaroni and cheese with some things one day. The next time I can use the leftover macaroni and cheese with some tuna and make a casserole. So
Yep.
nothing, goes to waste.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, so if you learn to cook a whole chicken, like, you're not going to eat a whole chicken in one night, unless you're feeding, multiple people. But yeah, you can reuse that chicken for different things. And at the end, like, you can even use the bones to make stock. Like, there's just so many different things that can be done and using multiple things. So yeah, there's a lot of ideas. So don't be afraid to research. And if you want to reach out to me for ideas, I'm more than happy. You just have to message me on because this is aired on Facebook and you can find me on Facebook. Um, and then also if you need help budgeting, I do that. I help people with their budgets, and their overall budget as well as just their grocery budget. So if you're needing assistance and figuring out how to even make ends meet like that, I'm more than happy to help.
That's so thoughtful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for all of the tips you've given us today. AARP also has several classes on financial literacy. They have classes on budgeting and the rest. So there are a lot of resources out here with AARP that will be willing to help you as well. We say thank you so much for being with us today. Tell all your friends and your family what you've learned today. Go back and take a look at a few of our other episodes from the past. And we look forward to seeing you again on Back to Basics. Until next time, have a great day and God bless.
Thank you.